mode.
Hello and welcome to this webinar by the Connecticut State Department of Education. Today we're going to be talking about linking to learning and bringing families into the learning process. I'm Judy Carson, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the fourth in a series of 4 webinars on high-impact family engagement. Today we're going to be defining family engagement. We have a new definition in Connecticut that we're working with. And then we're going to dig into what we mean by linking families to student learning goals. We'll talk about some of the research behind that. And then we have a guest here who's going to talk about a project called Lasers that is doing this work in Hartford and has been doing this for several years. Many ideas and also lessons learned from launching this kind of a project about linking parents to their children's learning. And then we're also going to introduce you to a summer book club that we will be doing this summer in Connecticut. So first of all, we've been working with a new definition of family engagement here in Connecticut. And if you've joined us for any of our other webinars, you've heard about this. This definition is going to be rolling out soon as part of a new framework for family engagement that the Connecticut State Department of Education has developed in partnership with the Office of Early Childhood and the Early Childhood Funders Collaborative. And just to let you know, if you haven't been with us before, we've talked about what a full and equal and equitable partnership means, and that was on webinar number 1 that we had with Ann Henderson. We've also talked about building relationships among families, educators, and community partners, and we looked at what it means for a school to be truly welcoming to all families, again, considering equity issues in that. And we worked with Betsy Laborious from CREC and the methodology that CREC offers on a self-study of how welcoming a school is. And then we also talked specifically about the front office staff and the other student support staff that families often interact with but are not always part of our professional development. And you'll see there we've inserted school staff in our definition because they definitely need to be part of the mix. And Ann Mead, who's the director of the Family and Community Education Center in Danbury, shared her strategies with us. So today we're ready to jump into the content. So in our definition, we've looked at equity, we've built relationships. Now it's time to talk about what those relationships are for. And that's about building the bridge between school to home, of course, to support children's learning and development. This quote from a parent in Connecticut is something I heard a couple of years ago. Someone said to me, you know, parents can support learning at home if they know what's happening in the classroom. And I think this really captures that gap between home and school. And parents are ready and willing, and the research shows us that, but they just don't often have the information they feel they need to really be a valuable partner in this relationship. And this wasn't just the perspective of one parent in Connecticut. This is also true throughout the research. The number one thing parents want from schools is to know, how is my child doing at the grade level? So specifically, how's my child doing right now with what they should be learning, and how can I help? Good news, we also know from research that programs that are purposefully designed to engage families in supporting children's learning lead to improved student achievement. So these are not generic, run-of-the-mill, drive-by, family engagement kinds of programs. These are very specific and purposeful programs designed with student goals in mind and then wrapped around relationships with families. So specifically, we have several pieces of evidence that I want to share with you today. The State Department of Education has recently produced what we're calling evidence-based guides to help districts that are planning and allocating their funding resources to support those efforts that we know have a very high likelihood of being successful. And so we have a number of these evidence-based guides in different disciplines. We have math, we have English language arts, we have social emotional learning, and we also have school family community partnerships. And you see the link there to the State Department of Education's website. And these are very new guides. They just came out a few weeks ago. And so specifically regarding family engagement and linking to student achievement, we know that when we conduct frequent in-person communication with families linked to teaching and learning goals, that it pays off in student achievement. So in-person can be and should be as much as possible face-to-face to develop those relationships, also telephone, also text, but what we're talking about here is personal, not the robocall that's sent to all families. That's going to be helpful for some instances, but if you're specifically looking at student learning, that's not the most effective strategy. Also, when we recognize and incorporate home literacy practices in the curriculum, we specifically see improvements in children's literacy. And creating structured conversations between teachers and parents about student learning multiple times a year has a great payoff. And when you look at the guide we've produced, there's more information about what that means to have a structured conversation. But basically, it's being very clear about what the learning goals are in the classroom and also demonstrating teaching strategies. Parents want to know, how are you conveying this information to my child in class? And what can I use that you're sharing in class so that I can make that same kind of connection at home? And then also providing training and information for families to support high expectations for their children's education. Again, if they don't have much information about the classroom, it's hard to have high expectations. And the research is incredibly strong around the importance of parents' high but realistic expectations for their students. And just to go a little bit deeper in this one particular study, there you go. This study was on Title I schools, and what they found was that students' achievement increased 40 to 50 times faster. Now imagine that, 40 to 50 times faster when teachers did these three things. When they, number one, met with families face-to-face, when they sent materials on ways to help the child at home, so families had a context, they understood what was going on in the classroom, and now they had tools to support that and to communicate with their child at home, and then also when teachers telephoned routinely about progress. So you can see how a relationship is developed through these three activities, and also materials and tools, and then the very important step of checking in and monitoring progress about how things are going on at home. So these things, the good news is they're doable, and they have been shown through research to really make a difference. So if you want to take a look at what's going on in your school and see how closely is our parent involvement program linked to student learning, we have a tool we can share with you to do a self-study. And this is downloadable in the webinar. And I'm going to go through just a few of the items. So there's no school that's doing nothing. Every school is doing something, that's for sure. But again, we started this webinar talking about high impact family engagement. Is there a way we can take some of the activities we're doing and take them to the next level and really make that strong connection for families that they're looking for? So in this tool, there's 4 categories: learning what students are doing in class, informative school communications, using student achievement data to design programs, and also collaborating with community learning programs. So let's take a look just at a couple of items in that first category, learning what students are doing in class. So you see that there's questions like student work is posted in the hallways and in public spaces. Well, that very often happens in many of our schools. Now, what about the number 2, exhibits of student work that show how we can recognize high-level work, and the work is differentiated, and we see what high-level work looks like in the classroom. So that's different than just showing all student work. Now we're starting to show what does good look like. And so on this scale, you would look at, oh, our school's already doing this, or we could do this easily. this will take some time, and some of these things do, or this might be really hard. And so as you go through a tool like this, give yourself credit for what you're already doing. Absolutely. Start with your strengths. And then there might be some low-hanging fruit, things you can do easily. If things are going to take some time, that's an activity where we talk about having an action team, having a group of people in your school that are working together, rolling up their sleeves to implement your family engagement plan. And so the last item there is talking about parent-teacher conferences where the students are. And again, many schools are doing that, but are we doing that at all grade levels? So that's another piece of this. Let's look at what's going on in different levels in our school. And I can tell you, I went to a terrific student-led parent-teacher conference of a student who was in 2nd grade. So kids really can talk very knowledgeably about their own work. Just to take a look at a couple of other items. So informative school communications. Articles in the school newsletter and on the website discuss what students are learning, and there's tips at home, how to support that at home, and interesting approaches that teachers are using. So here's another way that technology might be helpful. I've seen schools videotape, a teacher might videotape themselves doing a lesson. You can just do this with your telephone. Just set up the phone, videotape 10 or 15 minutes, and then put that on a YouTube video and direct families to go take a look at that. So there's ways to get this information out to families without having to do extra things. It's just capturing the things we're doing in schools and making those more available. And then you can take a look at the categories there around using student data and helping families, again, understand what the data mean. We do hear from families very often that they don't understand what data mean. We get reports back. They're multicolored and there's grids, but it's not really clear in plain language exactly what this means for my child, and even more so, how do I take action on this? And then the last piece, collaborating with community learning programs. And that item is staff collaborate with community-based after-school programs and exchange ideas and information with program staff. So that's another way to link to parents is through the after-school program. There's many parents that see more of the after-school staff than they do of the classroom staff by virtue of their schedule and picking up and dropping off. And I know through the state's professional development for after-school programs, a lot of emphasis is placed on making connections with the classroom teacher and the school day curriculum. So that's a quick overview of the research behind what we're calling linking to learning, and also a tool that schools can use to do an assessment and just see how we're doing. So I want to turn this over now to Jessie Lavorgna and hear about real work on the ground level that's happening here in Hartford. And Jessie is working on a project called Lasers, and I'll let her explain to you what that means. And she is part of a team at EDC, which is in Waltham, Massachusetts, and is working on a large federal grant that they won to do this work. But Jessie herself is living and stationed here in Connecticut. And I'm really pleased that you can be with us, Jessie. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Judy. I'm excited to be here as well. So I'm going to share a little bit about what Lasers has done with regard to linking to learning. I titled this From Near or Far, Linking Families to Their Children's Learning. And as you may be able to guess, we're going to talk a little bit about the idea that families don't have to be physically present in the school building in order to be effectively linked to their child's learning. So let's go to the next slide. Really quickly, Lasers, which is Literacy and Academic Success for English Learners Through Science, uses this approach to family engagement. And so we have been giving professional development to teachers, and from the professional development, those teachers then go and implement in their classroom, and then they link, they connect or link with their families around the learning that's going on in the classroom. And we also have some great community partners such as the Connecticut Science Center, and we're also partially funded by the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving. So we don't want to talk about this entire approach. We just want to know what happens in that lovely blue box of how do we connect families and teachers, and specifically with the learning that's going on in the classroom. So to give a little bit more background, lasers, we specifically use science as a vehicle for language and literacy learning in the pre-K through first grade realm. And so we're looking to connect families who are linguistically diverse into their children's learning. So how do we do this? We do this in two ways. We use, you can see in that blue box, it says home-based activities and school-based events. So what are those? So home-based activities, they look like this. We create the content and design them. They are simple, easy to use, just one pieces of paper that are always bilingual in English and in Spanish. And what they're doing specifically is extending the learning that's going on in the students' classrooms easily into the home. And I don't know about you, but I do not have a science background. So when I hear science, I kind of get scared. And the idea of engaging in science with my young child at home when I have no science background is like, whoa, I would rather not touch that and just allow the expert or the teacher to do that so that I don't screw up the science learning. With that in mind and knowing people's fear of science, we wanted to make these as easily and accessible as possible. So what we do is we take an approach of wondering and exploring and conversing with your child. I want you to pay attention to the activity that's on the right, which says our animal journal. I know you probably can't read it. It's very simple. It says things like go outside, look for an animal. We didn't say insect necessarily, but it kind of indicates that with the little images. And then talk about what you find. Make a drawing and write a little bit about it. And we're going to come back to that specific home-based activity sheet to show you what the results were in one school that used it. So this is a completed home-based activity sheet. On the right hand, or excuse me, on the left-hand side shows a drawing by a child, the writing that was done by a parent, and then on the right-hand side, what you see is that they actually constructed what the child drew. And this was just like, find things at home and build something with your child. This particular school was Sanchez in Hartford, and what they ended up doing was that they had so many of these constructed buildings that came back that they created a room that they called their Lasers exhibit room, where families could go and look at the different things that other families made. This is in that previous slide where I said pay attention to the animal journal. This is at Wish Elementary School here in Hartford, and the teacher just sent home that activity sheet, and the results were pretty phenomenal. What she ended up getting was,
oops, sorry about that.
No worries. What she ended up getting was that, so just so that you're clear on this, the prompt was just to go and find animals that exist in your neighborhood. Next one. There was no prompt to build anything, but the families that received this sheet of paper actually, and I know you can't zoom in, but they created all of these different bugs that they encountered and what they saw around the neighborhood. No materials were sent home. This was all done by what they found around the house and that they were motivated to make themselves. This particular exhibit is at Wish's museum night, which they host twice a year. So again, and the families that came to this were really excited to see their work on display. And it's just a simple way of connecting the learning that's going on in school to home in an easy, accessible way. It doesn't have to be hugely academic oriented. It can, specifically in this case, it was more so about having a conversation with your child around the learning that they're doing. And then also we use something called Laser's School-Based Events, where we invite families in twice a year to have a hands-on experience with the science learning that their children are doing in school. So again, to give them specifically, to give families kind of tips and ideas of how to engage their child with science at home. In these pictures, you see parents measuring like just plastic cups that they had stacked on one another with their children. And then in the other picture, it's plastic cups and plates, things that we may find around the house. We never want to use anything that is expensive, inaccessible, or just that would create a barrier to linking families to learning. Always things that are easy and accessible. So at these school-based events, families get a chance to have hands-on experiences that they can learn how to bring that science learning at home. The whole point of these school-based events is really to boost parent confidence in engaging in their children's learning, and also just finding ways to increase child knowledge. So those are the two ways that we have been, linking families to learning. That was a brief overview. There are 3 lessons that we have learned over the past 3 years of implementing this in Hartford Public Schools. And the very first thing that was learned is that relationships are king. It's the whole adage of no one cares what you know until they know that you care. If a school is looking to link families to learning and there aren't relationships already there, it is an uphill battle that will never end. So before you want to link anybody to learning, you have to build relationships. Secondly, communication and expectations need to be clear. Families want to be engaged in their children's learning, but if their roles and responsibilities aren't clearly defined and it's a bit nebulous and unclear, it becomes much more difficult for them to actively engage, because again, going back to the whole idea of, I don't want to screw up my child's science learning, so I'm just not going to do it. Whereas if you inform families that it's about having a conversation, just engage in conversation, explore with your child, it becomes much easier for them to do so. And lastly, mindset. When I'm talking about mindset, I'm talking about attitude in a lot of ways. If the teacher or school staff, school administration walk into this idea of linking families to learning with a really positive outlook on families, that no matter what your background is, you too can engage effectively in your child's learning, it's going to be a much more successful endeavor than if you set off with a deficit mindset of, oh, families don't have this background, therefore, I'm not totally sure if they can actually engage in this learning. Maybe we shouldn't even try this. No, go much more on the positive end. Assume that all families want to be linked to their children's learning and also have the capability of doing so. So those are my 3 lessons learned.
So thanks, Jessie. Let me ask a really concrete question. You mentioned dealing with families that speak different languages, and I know you're bilingual in Spanish. How do you deal with some of the other languages?
Thank you so much for saying that, because I forgot that one of the, in the beginning of the school year, what we've sent home to families is a kind of an overview of the program, but also really stressing the fact that home language is wildly important, in that children learn best when the adult that they're speaking with is communicating to them in the language that they best understand. So whatever that home language may be, there's so many Indian dialects here in Hartford, and there's also lots of Spanish speakers, but it's whatever that parent feels most comfortable in will help the child's language be supported. And we do send home materials in different languages. Hartford has the wonderful language access line, which I know teachers have also used in communicating with families about what is going on in the classroom. So, always having access to the material in the language that the parent feels most comfortable in is important.
And so this is terrific work that's been going on with families. And can you talk some also about the work with staff and helping staff to increase their bag of tricks in working with families as well?
Yeah, I mean, specifically in with regard to linking to learning. So what we've been doing through professional development is giving teachers these tools that we give them, the home-based activities. I've also stressed to them that it doesn't have to be a prefabricated activity that gets sent home that's bilingual, that's beautiful. It can be simply, why not send home, this is in the younger elementary school years, why not just send home one question, like a little sheet of paper? I've heard of teachers actually sticking the sheet of paper to the child of, ask me about counting in by twos today. And just to have that conversation, because so much, like, it doesn't have to be an activity, it doesn't have to be homework, it can just be a conversation that kind of clues or links families into the learning that's going on in the classroom. So it doesn't have to be elaborate, it can be simple. Other things, and it was on one of your previous slides, Judy, that it can simply, that inviting families into the classroom to observe, it doesn't have to be a formulated event or anything. It can just be, hey, we're going to be doing X during X time. Why don't you come in and be a part of it and actually create that learning community, which is a wonderful way to, again, build relationships and also link families to learning.
And I love that you talk about the relationships piece as really being the fertile soil that everything else grows in. And I'm thinking of your 3 takeaways, and I know you're working right now more in the early grades, but I'm also thinking that this would easily apply to middle and high school, where really, again, relationships are key, and communicating the expectations for families. Well, in high school, we're not necessarily asking parents to sit down and work on the homework and be part of the curriculum, but the expectation there in high school is around helping kids navigate through high school and next steps. So the task of communicating with families is really around what are the structures that the child needs to get through in order to be successful. When is the SAT given? When do you need to be taking pre-algebra in order to be on track for algebra, in order to be on track for calculus? You know, these are the things, it's really that role of guidance that the parents transition to in high school. So that's what the relationship is built, and then the conversation really is around the family's role and the teacher's role of guiding the student to their next step after high school. And I think, again, mindset, families can do this, and families do think at the upper grade levels. We've talked to families, and again, the research shows it. Families think their kids are doing great and they're headed to college and beyond, and sometimes it's a very upsetting awakening when they find out in junior, senior year that they haven't taken the prerequisites to do what they need to do. So this kind of transition role for families into guidance really happens in middle school. But I think these 3 keys still apply.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Judy, excuse me, I was just going to say too about high school, because I've done some work around high school, and one of the things that parents really appreciate too is that not only that, the preparation for college, but also looking at careers, so career development, and even sitting down and helping parents to understand what an application now looks like and how you have to do that, and here are the ways that you can prepare your child to go out and to really kind of think about this is what a job interview is, this is the way that you dress. So they're very, very concrete. Parents welcome welcome those kinds of comments and that kind of conversation.
I think, thank you, Betsy, for adding that, because I think that this is the part where, while we're talking kind of more specifically about family engagement, that's the community engagement aspect, because while teachers may not, teachers have so much on their plates, and to add like, oh, now I have to inform families about like how to do college applications, like there are wonderful organizations around the state of Connecticut that help support those transitional periods in life. So just also always tapping in, for schools to always be tapping into that which is in the communities that surround them is so important as well.
Yeah. So we also have another tool for you to download. This goes back to our earlier comment that every school is doing activities for family engagement and linking to learning and building trusting relationships. But bringing it to the next level, making it consistent, and really putting, we're so stretched for time and money that we have to put our resources in the most productive areas. And so we're sharing a tool with you today that you can use it at school with your team, and it'd be great to have families on that team as well. And what you do is you go through and just make a giant list of everything we're doing in family engagement. I've seen groups sit around the table with a bunch of stickies, and you just list it all, and there will be lots of stickies. Then you have a chart on the wall, and you place those stickies up on the chart. Does it link to learning? Well, then you put it in that category. Does it build trusting relationships? Well, you put it in that category. If it does neither, it goes in a separate category, and that's an activity that we might consider eliminating, or that's an activity that we need to beef up. If we are committed to that activity, we need to somehow tweak it so that it links to learning and builds relationships. So that's what we really want to do. We want to have all our family engagement activities in schools aligned and working towards our learning goals. And we know that in order to work with families, as Jessie said so clearly, in order to work as partners towards learning goals, we need to first have that relationship in place. So this is a tool you can download and use at a meeting. It's usually a pretty fun activity, and it has a lot of aha moments when we start putting everything we do in schools for family engagement all in one place. So what we want to do is offer you a few closing comments, and then don't go away yet, because we're going to talk about the summer book group. But we have a video here from Dr. Karen Mapp, and she's a professor at Harvard University, one of our gurus in the field of family engagement. And so I'm going to click on this. So that was Karen Mapp, and with the 3 tidbits, 3 bite-sized chunks we can take away on linking to learning. And it's also a way to introduce you to Karen Mapp, who is one of the authors of the book we're going to be using for the summer book study. We're going to be reading Powerful Partnerships, a Teacher's Guide to Engaging Families for Student Success. This is a new book that just came out last year, and it is very grounded in what goes on in classrooms and schools. Karen's co-authors are teachers, and they write from their own experience, and there's lots of vignettes about how strategies have worked with real people. So it's a great summer read, and a great read as you're taking a break and thinking about what you want to do when you go back in the fall. So we're going to launch a summer book group. We haven't done this before, but we're excited to give this a try here in Connecticut. Oh, whoops. I'm sorry, I apologize for the technical issues there. And we know we have people who listen to these webinars that are from outside Connecticut and, in fact, outside the continent. So we welcome anybody to join us in the summer book group. Here's the way we're going to structure things. Is we're going to have an opportunity for people to come together and to pick up a book and be part of an introduction session. That's happening Monday, June 25th. From 10 to 11 in the morning at a location at the Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection. You might know them as the State Police, but they're very friendly there in that building. They have a lovely meeting room. Just you'll have to bring your ID with you to get into the building. It's centrally located in the middle of the state. And so we are partnering with Scholastic to do this. And we're going to be piloting a book study guide that they're developing with us this summer, and they have offered to give us books for participants. So folks who can join us that day will be able to pick up a book. We are able to offer somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 or so books. So for sure, the first 20 people that sign up and can join us will make sure you get a book. But if you can't be there, you're still very much invited to be part of the group. You'll just have to get your own book, and it's easily available at any bookseller that you want to contact. And they're in stock. You'll get it quickly, and we will capture any instructions and what we do in terms of the introduction. We'll capture that and get that out to everybody. So if you can't make that in-person meeting in June, don't feel left out. You can still join us. So how we're going to do the virtual meetings on the private Facebook group, I'm going to turn that over to Jessie, who's been my partner in structuring this, and she'll talk us through that piece.
So you do have to sign up, and the link is at the top, which you probably can't click on now, but there's an Eventbrite to sign up for the book club and or book group. And how we're going to actually have our meetings is virtually. So again, the whole idea of you don't have to be physically in one place to be engaged. And we're going to do this through Facebook. If you do not have a Facebook account, you have to create one in order to join us. So sorry if you've been a holdout, but it's time to get on board. Because we want you to be part of the book group. We're going to meet, and I put meet in air quotes, on Monday evening from 8 to 9, 16th and the 23rd. And we'll be sending out some information as to how the chapters are going to be divided up, what we're going to be chatting about. This chat will be via typing. So again, chat in quotation marks, and but we're excited to do this. And also for those who can't make it during that time period, those discussions will remain on this private Facebook group, so that if you are not available from 8 to 9 p.m. but can do it the next morning or the next day, you too can still contribute to the conversation. It will always be it will go from synchronous to asynchronous, but always be living on the group's page.
Yep. So we'll let you know how we're going to divide up the chapters, and then we'll have some structured questions from that book study guide that Scholastic is developing with us. And so these will also be materials that you can take with you if you'd like to do a book study in your school or in your organization on this book. That'll be something that you'll have all the tools to do after this, this session. And we've invited one of the authors to join us in our chat on July 23rd. And we also have the opportunity to meet up in real time at the October Family Engagement Conference. And so Betsy Laborious and her colleagues at CREC are sponsoring another annual Family Engagement Conference. This is going to be on October 25th. And so those people who participate in the book group, we encourage you, first of all, to definitely, everybody should attend the October 25th Family Engagement Conference. And when we send out the link to the book group and the information from this webinar, we'll also make sure to send out information on how you can be part of that conference. And that'll be another opportunity for us to get together and talk about the book, talk about learning, and hopefully it would be really interesting if in October when we meet, some folks have implemented new ideas that they came across this summer doing this activity. So we are piloting this. I said we haven't done this before, so we welcome you to help us shape this, and we hope have some fun with it. So the link, if you want to jump on and sign up for the book group right away, the link is pretty easy. It's www, of course, and then all one word, Powerful Partnerships 2018. So that's Powerful Partnerships 2018.eventbrite.com. All right. So we have all 4 of the series of webinars are archived. The first 3 are already archived at fridaycafe.org, and this one will be archived very shortly. So if you missed any, or if you want to get some of the downloadable tools that we've offered through the other webinars, please jump over to fridaycafe.org. And then if you don't know, Friday Cafe is also our meetup once a month. From 8:30 to 10:30, we get together and talk about family engagement and new strategies, innovative work, and we hear from people in the field that are doing very interesting things. And it's also a chance to meet others who care about family engagement and are working in this area. So the dates have been established for next year. The dates are on the screen. The dates are also available at fridaycafe.org. And so if you're not already on our mailing list, go get on the mailing list, and then that way every month you'll get the notice of where Friday Cafe is taking place. So again, we'll have the resources for you on the website. And I want to thank Jessie Lavornia for joining me here today. I also want to thank Betsy Laborious from CREC, who also has joined with us and is our partner in doing this, and then Tom Sullivan, who is our webinar master and has made all of this happen for us. And thank you very much for joining us.